Hello and welcome to the NC podcast. My name is Natasha Collins and I am the founder of NC Real Estate, which includes its members club for landlords and property investors to come and build profitable property portfolios that completely aligns with their goals. If you haven't got it already, and I have been harping on about this so much, you need to download my property investment expansion success formula. This is the direction that you need to take through your property investment journey. So if you haven't got it already, head on over to ncrealestate.co.uk/flowchart. I'll put the link below in the show notes. So today I've got, back by popular demand, my mom, Melanie Collins, on the pod. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Hello, everyone.
Thanks for coming back. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, it has. It's been good.
I think it's been good not being on it.
Been relaxed.
Be relaxed. No one sprung out of you asking you to come on some of my my ventures. Yeah, so Mum came on, I think, September 2017, and we had a good old chat about when you bought your property in the Cotswolds and what you were doing with your bungalow in Bath, and we are going to have a catch up about what's happened since and how you feel about it, because there was a lot of people who really appreciated that first podcast for the main thing that actually there was a lot of people who were very impressed that you'd been brave enough to do it.
Well, it all happened really quickly and really easily, I think. It went through very smoothly, didn't it? I think when it happened, that you and I discussed what we should do, how I could move to how I could afford to move to the Cotswolds.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have afforded just to outright buy a house there. So it was the best option, wasn't it? Is to keep a foot in the door in Bath and to buy that property there. Yeah, it went through very quickly. It was very easy. I had super tenants at the time. Had good advice from the mortgage advisors, and everything went really well, I think.
Yeah, and so to recap, at the time, that was around about the time that you and Dad divorced, and then you'd bought a bungalow in Bath, and then you decided you wanted to move to the Cotswolds, so we remortgaged the property in Bath, and we took a deposit out for your one in the Cotswolds, right? So then you had two mortgages with Precise.
I had one with Precise Mortgages, which was the buy-to-let mortgage, which was interest only, and then I had another with Principality, which was the one for my house that I was living in.
Yeah, which happened all really smoothly. It all happened on the same day, and then we got your tenant in pretty quickly from there on out. And
we had to have the tenant in place ready to go. That was one of the conditions of the mortgage from Precise Mortgages.
Yeah.
I had to make sure that it all fell in line, because I wasn't allowed to live in the property or have it empty once we'd moved. So it took a little bit of planning, didn't it, to get it so it all fell into place. Because I had to also, to enable me to have the property in the Cotswolds, to have that mortgage, I needed the income from the property in Bath. So it all sounds very complicated, but actually it worked out really well and was quite simple. Looking back, I don't know how we did it, but at the time it all seemed to be very simple. Yeah.
So the last podcast we did was probably just after that had happened, maybe a year after that had
about
happened.
a year or so after, wasn't it?
And so we went through that whole process, and if you guys want to go back through it, I'll post the link to the podcast below that we did back then, so you can have a listen to then versus what's happened now. One of the questions I kept getting was how did you hold your own as a new landlord? How did you feel about that? Because some of my listeners have said, wasn't your mum having sleepless nights?
No, I didn't really. I think I'm fortunate I've got you as a daughter, so I could ask you about what should happen and if there were any issues, I could speak to you about it. So I already knew with your advice about making sure that I had the gas safety check every year and that I had the electrical safety checks done. And I was very fortunate that I had a very good tenant, and we did the proper referencing on the tenant, and we had a good relationship. So if there were any issues, he would come to me and say, you know, I've got a water leak, and then I'd get the plumber in to sort it out. I think communication is the key, and has always been the key, is being able to talk to your tenant and making sure everything's okay. Having somebody that I can go to for advice, which is Natasha. I've been very fortunate that obviously she's got all this knowledge behind her. So, yeah, I didn't really have sleepless nights at that time. The only thing that did start making me worry was when interest rates started rising. And that was a little bit of an issue, because obviously I needed to make sure I had enough money coming in to cover all the outgoings on the property. And that
to
was fine.
backtrack a little bit, that Precise at the time would only give you a variable.
Yeah, I'm still on that actually. It's coming to an end. And we took out a 4-year variable rate mortgage.
Which was the only product that you could get at the time, but it was such a low product to start off with. We kind of banked on that not rising super steeply within the 4 years.
And actually, to be fair, it hasn't. It just had one 6-month period, I think, where actually I was having an increase every month, and that was a little bit worrying. But on the other hand, we then on the property in the Cotswolds, we had that on a 2-year, and then we renegotiated that to a 4-year with Principality again. Natasha sort of advised me to look at that before I came to the end of my mortgage, and actually they were giving the best rates. Because I was already a customer with them, and they were so good. Actually, I would recommend Principality. They sent me through a schedule of a choice of about 20 different mortgages that I could take out with them. At different time periods and that, and I chose to go with a 4-year fixed with them, which has been really good. So I've always known what the property that I'm living in, how much that's going to cost me, and I know how much that's going to cost me going forward.
And that's been. Has that been useful for you in planning how you will go? Because within that time, you've changed jobs.
Yes, within that time, I was made redundant. Which was okay. But then when I didn't know how much money I was going to be having coming in, it was really useful knowing how much money was going out. So I think that's really good, is to know. That made me feel secure, is knowing how much money I was going out. So having one mortgage that I knew exactly how much was, and that was my home, which I think was really important. And then the other one was really good. Although it gave me a few sleepless nights at a time, actually the mortgage change wasn't, the interest rate change wasn't very much at all.
Has it gone back down?
It hasn't gone back down to what it was, but it's sort of stabilised now, and it's fine.
And then we'll get you onto a fixed term come March.
Yeah, which would be better. And then, so last year I was made redundant, and so that was a few issues. And then my very good tenant handed in his notice, which then again I think gave me a few sleepless nights when Natasha and I had a few discussions about actually what should we do. Should we sell the property? Should we keep it ticking over? Should we get new tenants? Should we redevelop the property? So that was quite an interesting period. It was a little bit worrying, but also quite interesting, I think, wasn't it?
So the bungalow sits on quite a nice big plot of land with views over the centre of Bath, which are beautiful. And so at the time we had been thinking, I know that you'd wanted to sell the property.
Because I'd been made redundant and being a little bit unsure about the future. I was sort of thinking it'd be easier just to get rid of it and not have that added worry.
And so we thought, well, okay, could we maximise the potential, because your actual mortgage fixed term was coming up in a year's time, so we had a little bit of time to play with. There was a little bit of money sitting in the bank which we could play with relatively risk-free. So we started the process of looking to see what we could do, and we went through some development options, didn't we? We had development to extend to a 4-bed with a massive conservatory and a big kitchen extension. we had the option of pulling down the property and putting up 2 3-bed semi-detached, but they were going to be small. And then we also had smaller options, which was to put the 4-bed in, so just converting using permitted development rights, the garage into a bedroom, which was a possibility, and then we could extend out the back or extend out the side. And so we did a cost analysis of that with the architects, and we had a look at it, and it was interesting, wasn't it? Really interesting to see what the plans were. And then you found new tenants.
I did. I think what it did was gave me a little bit of breathing room, and from what Natasha was really sensible really was to look at all the options.
Yeah.
Is to take a step back and look at the different options that I had, that I didn't have to just do this knee-jerk reaction, let's just sell it and get rid of it. Mm-hmm. It was, there are things that you can do. Is this the best way forward? And actually looking at the income, the actual best option at that time, because obviously if I'd sold up, I would have had to pay redemption penalty, is that right?
£5,000 that you'd have had to have paid to get out of that mortgage early.
Which really, realistically, would have been very foolish. But also, I needed the income because I didn't want to go back to work and work full-time anymore. I wanted to just work 3 days a week.
Yeah.
So actually, if I'd sold the property, I wouldn't have had any more income coming in.